find yourself a mentor, because you don't know what you don't know if you don't know it. And I know that's silly, but like, you get challenged by people that tell you things that you listen to. If you're always in a vacuum, you won't receive a challenge, you won't grow.
Welcome to Drive, the podcast for truck drivers who are looking to enhance their lives both on and off the road, and for carriers who are looking for that perfect fit. I'm Chelsea Faulkner, and we're here to bring you conversations that will help to keep you moving forward in every area of your life. Whether you're a seasoned trucker or just starting off in the industry, this is a show for you. I'm your host, Chelsea Faulkner, and for this episode, I'm joined by our CEO, Zac Elsts, for a candid conversation about what it takes to grow a long-term career in trucking. We're going to walk through 3 critical parts of that journey: starting strong, growing your skill set, and stepping into leadership or ownership. If you're a driver who wants to get ahead without burning out, this one's for you. Zac, welcome back to the show. It's been a while since you've been on. How's it feel to be back in front of that microphone?
It's great. You've been doing a really good job with the program. It's been awesome. We're getting a lot more views and listens, and I'm excited to be back to hear what's going on, see what's new, and talk about whatever you want to ask me questions about. You may not like the answers, or I may not have any answers.
Listen, that's the best way for it to be. I mean, that makes me want to ask you harder questions and see if I can't play Stump the Owner. That kind of feels like a fun game.
I'll just tell them to ask you. I'll just reverse it on you somehow. You'll get the Uno reverse card.
Perfect. That sounds like a great plan. So, Zac, for anybody out there who's listening that is not familiar with your journey, who's not familiar with HandledNow, give us just a little bit of backstory. How long have you been in business? How long has HandledNow been around? And what does that look like?
10 years ago today, I was the last time I ever worked for someone else. That was actually something that I looked at this morning. We started this journey, just a couple guys saying, hey, let's create a lifestyle business. We were younger, having families that are newer, wanting to do stuff that was kind of really what a lot of people strive for these days, is having more flexibility and having mobility at the same time. And so we just decided we could do something. HandledNow, I was in driver staffing with a background in it, and felt that we could really make a difference. When you start a business, you're like, you have your service, and then you have to actually figure out how to run a business with your service. So that's kind of how we got started. And 10 years later, we'll turn 10 in a month. So super exciting. That
is amazing. And we managed to land this on an awesome day, 10 years to the day since you decided that you were no longer working for somebody else.
That was probably the wildest moment, because you're kind of jumping off a platform and you're not sure if you have a parachute on, or you're not sure if the parachute works, or you're not sure how long it's going to take to get to where you're going. So there's just so many different things that are going through your mind. But I would encourage anybody that's thinking about that kind of a thing, if you've got something out there, and it doesn't have to be your own business, if there's like this things you want to do, I would encourage people to just do the things that you are really good at and passionate at and can make money at, all those things. But sometimes the things that come to us so easy, we don't know because it comes so easy. So talking to people that are around you to help you understand what you're good at. Like, oh, I didn't even know I was good at that because it was so easy. So that was kind of, I guess I would say, advice for somebody that's thinking about doing their own thing or making a change in their life that's, only going to better themselves. And something keeping them back, don't let it hold you back. Do it.
For sure. And I'm so sure that that's relatable to so many people in our audience, especially those drivers out there who just decided to go out and branch out and go buy their own truck and get out on the road instead of working for a company themselves. So I'm sure that that's very comparable as far as that goes. So way to get in there with that. And then as far as things go, when you started with HandledNow, how did you view that overall career progression for drivers and what that looked like?
Well, it seemed like in the world of business, people get into business to make money, to sell, do all these different things. I was watching the companies that I was working with just kind of sell and restructure, and seeing the numbers and feeling like people were getting lost in the mix, or like, how do you make a difference in your career progression, especially as a driver? I feel like it's hard because if you're holding the steering wheel and you're going down the road, and that's what people think you're doing, and if you're doing the same repetitive thing over and over again, the progression may not seem like it's happening, especially in an industry that doesn't seem to reward like seniority or time in it, right? So we felt like we could just make a difference, whether it's calling people and talking to them about what's good for them, Some of this stuff is recent. We started using, human psychology to try to figure out how to match people and do things with people and make a difference. Because then the clients are going to have the things that they need. They're going to have a person that's there connected that wants to stay. So you're seeing the progression go from someone that may be a dime a dozen or hopping around. And at that time, man, people were hopping jobs. Like, I would go through these applications and you didn't have 5 pages wasn't enough for 3 years. And I'm not making fun of anybody. That's the way the industry it was. So like seeing that happen, I'm thinking, oh, this isn't sustainable. And how are people going to ever like convince an employer like I'm worth more? Well, I don't know if you are, because you don't stick around. So that progression and watching that now to seeing people come through that are happy where they're at, feel like they're being taken care of, and really feeling like they're being heard. Because if you're driving now, you got cameras and everything in the truck, so it's like your ability to communicate with human is just getting itself smaller and smaller and smaller. And so like just an opportunity for somebody to hear you, and that's what we kind of wanted to provide, some validation and some opportunity to help people. We didn't want to be referred to as recruiters, because recruiting was like an industry of like, it's in the devil, like they weren't honest. So that's almost a really long answer.
Yeah, no, almost advising, career advising, I think. I'm hearing you say that you're all over the place, but also what I'm hearing you say is that throughout this 10 years, what you guys have really done is you've come in and you've identified the fact that as you really start to dig into the industry, you saw these problems on the outside, but then as you continue to dig into the industry, you continue to find more problems. So what we see a lot of within the industry is these companies get in here and then they have this idea that, okay, we're going to make all of these changes, but then that's it. And it's going to stay static throughout the entire life of the company. And we're going to do things just one way. You guys just continue to move your processes on down the road. You change them and you shift them with drivers' needs as you continue to identify those. And that's really something that the last couple of conversations that I've had, that's something that continues to come up. That repeatable message with drivers especially is that we have to continue to be willing to shift that narrative on down the road, that we're going to have to continue to develop new ways of talking to people, new ways of developing additional skill sets that we can hand them in order to continue to build that relationship amongst the industry.
Yeah. And, helping people understand the nuts and bolts of the industry. If you want to move from one job to another, then you've got to consider the things that you're going to be able to have to do to get into those jobs. You're not going to be able to haul radioactive waste right away. If that's your goal, you've got to start somewhere. So thinking about progression, thinking about driving in the world, and even if you're like a new driver or you're experienced, if your MVR is clean, then you're going to be able to get a TSA clearance. You're going to be able to get security clearances that are going to allow you to kind of step up your opportunities, open up the door and make more money. So like, that's what's really exciting too, is just kind of sharing with people those different types of jobs that are out there. And even if we didn't offer them, you're giving them something that they have a opportunity to, maybe they didn't know, and we learn a lot from the drivers too. I mean, you probably learn more from them and your knowledge of stuff and just normal things that you would never hear about, but like building those relationships and finding out stuff like that in those ways. That's really like the other side of this coin, is the human connection is really important to us.
And now I see that you guys sit at a very unique position because of the fact that you guys are working with two different customer skill sets. You are working with your customers as far as the people that you're staffing for and the companies that you're working for there, and you're learning everything that's going on with them. And then you're also working with the customer that's the truck driver and everybody that you're talking to there, and you're taking in all of these stories from them as well. So with all of this information that you've gathered throughout the last 10 years, plus since you were in the industry before then, what is it that you've learned that you would take back to new drivers that are getting into the industry? And what lessons would you give them?
I mean, I would say really being reliable, thinking about how you fit into the bigger picture. Yeah, you've got a lot of things that are going on in your life, but figure out how to prioritize that to create reliability for yourself. And then safety, I think that you can have more of a better focus on safety. There's so many different little things that you can do from a safety perspective that can hurt your career, and it can happen right away. So, the silly stuff like speeding and all those things, they're just not even worth it. As far as new drivers go, yeah, make sure you can maintain a safe record, keeping your record clean. Like I was saying before, that's just going to be a foundation. And the longer that you have your license and the cleaner that it is, as far as not getting yourself caught up in anything that you don't have control over. Those are probably some of the biggest things that you should prioritize. And being with a company that has that priority is a big piece. So like knowing what companies out there, get on some of the job boards that are out there, or the driver forum boards that are out there, talk to some local drivers, do some of your research and find out if Google does a good job or letting people vent. Sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not so good. But like if you can look through all that and find a company that you feel like prioritizes safety and honor you as the liability, then I think that will be a great position, and stay there until you can build, a year. If you can go there longer too, then that's great, because then that shows that you're willing to stick it out through thick and thin. And those things all create opportunities down the road. Anything that you do, don't burn bridges, and you can burn bridges in the trucking industry without even realizing.
Absolutely. I know that you guys really have done your best to build this culture of not just surviving within the industry, but really thriving in the way that you build your career as a truck driver or as anybody within the logistics industry. So what are some continuous skill development things that you would say that are critical for drivers within the industry today?
10 years ago, we had just started talking about putting cameras in trucks. And, I remember having conversations with people back then. And, even 10 years ago, we were just getting started with applications online where you didn't have to fill something paper. So like to think about how the industry has changed so much in that time period, you have the ELD systems, you no longer writing it down on a piece of paper. There's ways for you to be more organized. So learn some of those things, get involved. Most people that are getting into an industry at a younger age are able to learn these things because they're going through their school, doing a lot of this stuff on it. But a lot of drivers start out later in life. So really continually building some of those skills, whether it's the ELD system, and there's academies out there online that you can take courses to sharpen your own speaking skills. So look inside to yourself and think about some of the things that you have a weakness for. A lot of companies talk about SWOT analysis. Maybe do some weaknesses for yourself and talk to somebody that you trust and say, hey, listen, I'm thinking that I'm going to get into this industry. And if they know the industry, that's the best person to talk to, and let them give you some feedback. And then maybe even get some freight handling. Maybe get some skills like a certification from OSHA or forklift training. So that one thing I found in my professional career, and I got started in logistics, was I could do more things. So even when I was working in a brokerage area, I got a forklift license in case I needed to make, and I was younger, I wanted to make more money at the end of the day. And so I could. So those little things help you really just kind of build more things. And I know I'm kind of getting into certifications at this stage, but like continuous skill development and certifications kind of go hand in hand. Just like if you're in insurance, you have to constantly keep things updated. Your license, you got to keep it updated. So knowing the things that you can add to it. Also, if you don't feel like you're ever going to need to haul, if you're not touching freight, then there's certain things you probably never have to deal with. But if you're going to be wanting to do something in the space of like touch freight, where you can make a lot more money too, then, I would say get involved in those areas. And there's so many groups that are out there. There's so many. We use JJ Keller for a lot of training stuff and giving them a free plug. But there's companies that are like that give you really good access to stuff that can keep your skills sharp and keep you on top of how the industry is changing.
Now, Zac, I also know that there's a lot of competition right now within the industry on drivers looking for jobs. Sometimes we've got several drivers that are applying for the same job. And we're back to the space where drivers are having to stand out more. So how is it that drivers can make themselves more of a valuable asset to companies or make themselves more appealing to companies whenever they're applying? And how can they build their own career and their own skill sets in that way outside of just those certifications and outside of just those trainings? How is it that they appeal more to those companies?
I would say before you had to have a CDL, and even up until probably 12 years ago, wherever that time period, trucking was always kind of considered an outlaw type thing. So by nature, like you're outlaw, you're going to be rough, kind of buck the system, go against the grain, that kind of mentality. That is important because you're traveling on the road. Things can get dangerous. Conditions can get dangerous. You do need to be rugged to the extent that you are able to take care of yourself and those around you. But also, that doesn't really always lean into the partner aspect of mindset. So like if you can have a growth mindset that's focused on being a business partner, not just an employee, You could go into a job interview and you could simply say, well, hey, I know what you guys do. Can you tell me a little bit more? How can I be a good business partner for you guys? I want to be a driver, but I want to help support your business. If you can show some initiative, care about customer satisfaction, and I know that logistics is like the eighth wonder of the world, so learn something more outside of driving to kind of understand how the whole thing works. It'll give you a better appreciation for it. It'll help you understand how timing works to get to your appointments and things, and how you can be shut down. You don't want to get shut down over the road because you miss your timing. So if you're thinking like a business partner, not just an employee, you're going to get yourself a good opportunity, and people want to know that you care. So even talking in those terms, I mean, you can say, even if you didn't, you're not faking it, but you're using that to grow your own. So your growth mindset would be you thinking that way, or working to think that way so that you can think that way, so that you can be better. And companies are going to want to hire you because they're going to think that you're going to take care of their equipment. They're going to think that you're going to be there to, show up to work when you need to be there, that you're going to, if something goes different that day, you're not going to throw a fit. You're going to be able to get it done and safely. So I would say the biggest thing is think like a partner.
Especially when you start to think about how many issues you have with drivers not having that relatability or the flexibility within their schedules or the ability to really communicate and dig in and have that understanding of what's going on, even when they call in and they start getting upset with dispatch because they don't want to take the time to understand what's happening in dispatch either. But then you've got those other drivers who they'll take the time to talk to dispatch and figure out what's going on there. And there's a whole difference in what kind of driver it is that you're working with when a driver can come in and say, okay, yes, I understand that I'm frustrated with the situation, but I also understand that the other person on the other side of the phone is just as frustrated as I am. So that mindset, that's key.
Yeah, look for ways to validate others. Again, it's human psychology. Everybody's in a different place. So being careful not to be too judgmental about your circumstances and to be more accepting. So your growth mindset is going to allow you to do those things, but you don't want blinders on to an extent to everything. There are some things that you probably want to know, skills. We talked about that, being adaptable. When drivers didn't want cameras in their trucks, we understood it. It doesn't mean that it was acceptable.
Yep.
He understood it though. So being willing to adapt will help you stay ahead when things do start to change. And I'm just trying to think of stuff out loud that might be new and might be changing. Automated trucks, there's a shortage. So they're probably going to try to use those for jobs that aren't able to be filled very easily. So those aren't even real people that want those jobs. So consider some stuff like that. Don't be afraid. Don't let things stir the fear in you about stuff, because that's just going to, it's going to add something else to your pot that you really don't need. It's not going to do you any benefit to kind of poison your mind with that kind of stuff. But you treat things like a challenge and an opportunity to find out what you know more. If you suck at it, the opportunity was you figured out that you're not good at it.
Now, I know that this industry is constantly evolving. There's something that is always changing. I swear, every time that I open up my laptop in the morning or that I pull my phone up, there's a new news story within the trucking industry that something new is happening. So what kind of skills or habits can truck drivers really start to hone into that'll help them to tune into those things that are happening when the industry is changing and figure out what that is so that they can stay one step ahead of it?
Well, staying organized, knowing what's happening is important. Knowing that you're getting information from a reliable source, because there is a lot that's out there. So if you see something, we always joke that we get on Reddit and check it out. It's a fun space to learn a lot of different things. It's not always safe for work, so you want to be careful what you're looking at. They do a good job of showing you this stuff is good. But basically, being willing to adapt, because the ones that don't are dinosaurs, and we know what happened to those. And so the biggest thing in this industry is embracing change and staying up to speed on regulations, because if you don't know what's going on, the ignorance isn't going to be something that you're probably going to be able to get away with. Remember when they implemented the 30-minute rule after 8 hours, that's not something that's optional. So you can't just say you didn't know. And so reaching out, staying up to date, and embracing the change, because that stuff is the beauty of change, is the actual change itself.
Now, I know that you touched on this just a little bit earlier about trying to be a little bit more understanding about some of the things that are happening whenever drivers are out and on the road. But there's also a lot more to it, I believe, as far as mental health goes, as far as when drivers start to get out and they're on the road for long periods of time or they're starting to hit traffic delays, things like that. How is it that you feel like drivers can really start to hone in and manage those setbacks that they start to experience once they're out on the road without losing the momentum that they need in order to keep them moving from one space to another?
Well, we probably all know someone that has an aggressive driving behavior in their personal car. All you got to do is pick up a device and get on some platform, and you will see somebody losing their mind behind a vehicle. So I think perspective is key. I caught myself when I was younger. I would think, why did I react that way? And so then the next time it came up, I thought of myself, how silly that would look. It kept perspective of how dangerous that activity could be, whether it's going fast or not using a signal or whatever you're doing. That could be a bad habit too. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be malicious, but like having some perspective, that's the key. A bad day, you're going to have those. A bad manager, people quit bad managers. A tough manager, you need to understand the difference. And so ask others. The perspective is going to be something that is going to help you because you're going to spend a lot of time driving. You have the opportunity to use that reflection to think about, I always talk about dibs, do it better, because you can think about, okay, today, what did I do really good at? This. What did I not do good at? This. What can I improve on? This. And then that mindset helps you grow and stay in tune with yourself. And then you'll continue to be human, because it's really easy to lose track of your humanity when you're in a machine and you're with a bunch of other people in machines that are trying to get to go wherever they're going. I think there's studies that have been done that as soon as people recognize the humanity behind the wheel, then the things can change. So I always think about my kid, my family, who's on the road. My kid, when she was growing up, I would look over and I would say, hey, look how silly that person looks texting on their phone. Did you see how far down they were looking without even looking up? And then you see something bad happen. You explain how it happened. She got the benefit of having that perspective early. I don't know if she's going to keep on to it, but if you can have that perspective as a driver, you're going to do well and hopefully increase your longevity in the industry.
I've heard you touching on growth all throughout this conversation. However, there's a lot of drivers out there who don't just jump in that truck in order to hit that, 10 million mile mark or however many million miles that they would like to achieve within the truck. Some of them jump into the truck with the idea that, hey, I want to level up. I want to be in management. I want to end up owning my own company at the end of the day. So for those drivers who are looking for that growth and they want more than just the experience, what kind of relationships do they need to start developing? And what kind of relationships did you start to develop early on in your career that really helped your growth?
When I got into this industry, I was like, what in the world am I doing? And it wasn't because I didn't want to be here. I didn't know what I was doing. I used to have a list of drivers that were responsible for areas I was responsible for. And so I would call the ones that had been there the longest and say, hey, I'm Zach. I just started. I wanted to introduce myself to you. Is there anything that you would like to share? And they would turn out to be the mentor that I would be looking for. But find yourself a mentor, because you don't know what you don't know if you don't know it. And so, and I know that's silly, but like you get challenged by people that tell you things that you listen to. If you're always in a vacuum, you won't receive a challenge. You won't grow. You won't learn. You won't be able to gain anything. You're just going to continue to be a steering wheel holder. And, there's a place for that. There are jobs that works out great. But I would say find a mentor, hands down, people that believed in me, challenged me, and really didn't just take answers without asking for clarification. They opened doors that I didn't know existed. It's funny because it's like the whole industry is driving, but you're on a journey too. So like the short journey is the day. The long journey is where you're going, where you're heading. And surrounding yourself with the right people is just like anything in life. You don't want to shut people out, and you want to build relationships, not break them down.
For sure. Now, I know that you have personally seen drivers that have been starting off being in the truck. They ended up being driver trainers. They ended up going and ending up managing their own terminals. And I know that you've done this because I've heard you talk about them on a regular basis. What qualities do you see in those drivers whenever they're first starting out or anywhere on their growth journey What qualities do you see in those drivers as they're moving their way into management?
Those are things where you were just like so excited for them. Like the thing that I love is everyone else's success. That is something that I don't think enough people take active participation in. I think that if you did take active participation in the success of others and lifting each other up, you would have a healthier, happier life. But being curious and humble, I would say the things that made this stuff out, they had a lot of leadership qualities that you would find in the military. They had a lot of organizational skills. They could talk. Didn't mean they had $10 and $15 words. They could talk clearly. And if you talk to somebody with a 10-year-old vocabulary, you're not talking down to them. You're talking to them like a regular person. So, not thinking more of yourself. I remember talking to a driver one time, and we were talking about someone. What do you do when someone doesn't answer the phone? Or he was like, I don't really care. So I'm not that important of a person. And he was telling me from the perspective of humility. He wasn't talking about how he was thinking of himself in a low light, but he was like, I'm not that important. So if they're not calling me back, I'll figure out something else. So, having that humility, having curiosity, and show that you're serious about learning, those of all, and networking and not being a jerk, those are all the qualities that I've seen above some of those, like I was telling you, like some of the stuff you might see that are similar to military qualities like leadership and organizational, and really just like not making excuses and taking responsibility for your actions. And those are people you need. You need people that will tell you what's going on between their ears, because you don't know you smell until you're around somebody that's like. But
if we're talking about Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny. But if your friends are close to you and they don't tell you you smell, they're not your friends. Because they shouldn't want you going around smelling. Getting honest relationships. Those are key. I was told in this business to be successful, you just have to show that you care, even if you don't. But if you show it long enough, you will.
Well, and I love the fact that you pose curiosity as one of the top ones in there, because I feel like when people are curious, that's one of the biggest ways that you can show that you care. Because when you're curious, you just keep asking those questions and you keep showing up in order to see just how much more you can learn each day. So curiosity, it's one of those key things. And it's something that a lot of people don't prioritize because they don't necessarily think about it, or they think it's one of those naive things to prioritize. So you jumping out there and saying that's one of the top two. You stay humble and you have that humility, and then curiosity. That's huge.
I think of it in terms of, if you're going to get pulled over, if you're going to be on the highway, you're going to get pulled over. Whether you did something right or wrong, you're eventually going to have an interaction with a police officer. So if you take a growth mindset that they're teaching you something, unless there's a clear violation, then you're going to find yourself in a better position. If you take that same stance where you go, showing up and knowing it all, you don't have anything to prove to anybody other than you don't care. There's no space for you because you know it all. The day the super trucker's gone, unfortunately. I guess if you haul live cattle, then drive as long as you want. But outside of that, because they're live, right? You can't just pull over and take a break with live animals. So, yeah, I would say the super trucker used to be a unique thing in not being one, to the extent that you know it all. Being a know-it-all is not going to get you anywhere. It's going to get you in your own little hole, and you'll never know anything else other than what you know. And you know it all, right? So you don't learn.
Now, as far as setting yourself up to become a business owner, I know that you had to do some things in order to set yourself up financially, professionally, both of those things. How do drivers set themselves up, or what tips do you have for them in order to make sure that they have the ability to achieve that goal themselves if they would like to start their own business?
The nice thing about starting your own business is you can do it anytime. So if you're considering it, I would say first off, go organize it. Spend your $90 to $100. The longer you have tenure of that business name, the better the bank is going to be looking at you, right? And then show them when you started operating that business. Build your credit. Make sure that you're taking care of your personal credit, because the bank's you're going to have to borrow money unless you have a nest egg, and that's pretty fortunate to be able to have something like that if you do. But if you don't, if you're like the rest of us, you're going to need money. You need to borrow. You're going to have up times. You're going to have down times. So don't spoil yourself all the way when you have a great season. Keep some of that. Think about investing in your future from the perspective of not rushing into buying a truck until you understand the costs and understand how all of that works. Talk to a financial advisor, find out what makes sense. I mean, it could come down to like the type of truck that works good for you. You know, there's always different models, there's different makes, there's different things that you can go, you know, what if you're going to target over the road, you may want a different type of truck than if you want to target local, if you're going to own your own business, right? Because you can buy a truck and go driving and it's going to break down. The first time we ever bought a truck, it broke down that weekend. And of course it was going to break down that weekend. We bought it and needed it. So just knowing those little things, again, getting back to the idea of talking to people, not being in a vacuum, not being siloed out. And, you know, if you treat your driving like a business, you've already gotten started. And then maybe find yourself a business partner, somebody that is almost the opposite of you, so that you can deal with yourself.
I see what you did there, because now I'm sitting here thinking about you and your business partner, Aaron, and I'm like, yeah, you found the opposite of you.
Well, but it's true. You need someone doesn't have the same proclivities. In business, you want to have 3 decent years. You're going to have 3 bad years, 3 good years, hopefully. But yeah, man, if you have a home run year, every year is not going to be that way. If your home run happens on a walk-off, make sure you understand that that's what's happening. Those are big key principles. You got a 10-year cycle, and as a business owner, that you want to consider from that perspective.
Absolutely. Now we're going to play a game of rapid fire. So you're not allowed to overthink these questions. And once I'm done with these questions, maybe I'll stop asking you questions. We'll see. So, you ready?
Do it.
What is one hard truth that you think all truck drivers need to hear?
No one else is going to save your career. You own that thing. That is yours. That's why you're the driver. It's why you have the license. So take ownership of it.
What is one mistake that you made early in your career?
Saying yes to everything, thinking that everything was a good idea. This must make sense because it's in front of my face. It's an important topic because you're like a consumer, and then you go to be a business owner, and you're now buying wholesale and commercial. So if you have access to more money, don't go spend it all at once. Just because you can buy something doesn't mean you should. You know, that needs to make sense. That's why having a business partner is important. But yeah, saying yes to everything, it'll ruin your career, because saying no actually builds character as well.
What's one thing that you would change about the industry if you had the ability to?
I mean, from day one, it's what I've always wanted. It was better treatment, more respect for drivers. So if you're talking about money, if you're talking about just attitude, but they're the backbone of the supply chain, we should act like they are. We shouldn't trivialize what they do. They shouldn't have separate restrooms that aren't cleaned as well as others. I mean, we've been through so many periods of time in this country and in humanity overall that we should know by now that we should be treating people right all the time. And the drivers especially, because if you wouldn't have a single thing if it wasn't for something that they did for you.
Absolutely. Now I'm going to drop a statistic that I heard actually last night, which is the fact that across the U.S., in any kind of small town across the U.S., one of the top jobs that people look for is actually truck driving. So knowing that, and knowing that the majority of people out there who are in rural America are looking to become a truck driver at some point in time in their life. Zac, what's one piece of advice that you would give new truck drivers who are looking to jump in that truck?
Freedom isn't free. I know that sounds silly, but the independence that you gain by being your own boss is something that you pay taxes for, sacrifice for. Everything is a currency. So respect it. But if you want your freedom, you have to earn it. Someone else is going to take it from you, but you're going to take a check from them. You can be independent and free. And I think that anyone that asks me about working for yourself or working in your own environment where you can kind of have some control and you can help other people not feel whatever about business and stuff like that, because you shouldn't have to hide everything. You should be able to be authentic where you are. That's a big thing that we talk about all the time. And I know you are a big proponent of it yourself, but authentic and independent, the freedom is just the best. And you don't have to own the business to experience that if you're with the right people. some of these things, you don't think about them all the time, but they're all important. And so I think that just being thoughtful and perspective, those things are going to be really, really helpful no matter what you do.
Absolutely. Zac, for anybody out there who's listening that would like to connect with you, where is it that they can find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, HandledNow, the website, my first initial Z, my last name, ELSTS, anywhere that you would find social media stuff. And you could just hit the Z Elsts at HandledNow.com if you wanted to email, or click the link on this podcast too, I think.
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, all right. That is it for this episode. Thank you so much, Zac, for taking the time to jump back on here and get back in front of that microphone. Building your career in trucking does not happen by accident. It takes intention, it takes effort, and it takes the right support system. If you're ready to take that next step or to help someone else do the same, follow the show, share this episode with the driver who needs it, and check us out on LinkedIn in order to keep that conversation going. And because it'd be a missed opportunity with Zac on the show, if you're ready to explore a change in your career or you need some guidance, we've got you covered over at Handled Now. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Drive. For more from Handled Now, head to handlednow.com and sign up for our newsletter. You can also join us on our Facebook group called The Driver's Seat and follow us on LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts.